made it.
Good to be here.
I didn't think we were going to make it. Holy moly. Catastrophic computer failure, right as we were going on. As in, I had no microphone, I had no camera. I don't know what the heck happened. That was not fun. Anyway, sorry for the delay, everyone. Excuse the technical issues. We are here. We're here. Woohoo! All right. Apologies. But yes, I just went into StreamYard here, and suddenly it said I had no microphone or no camera on my computer, which of course I do, because you see me every week all the time with a microphone and a camera. So I don't know what the heck happened there. But when in doubt, hit the restart button, and here we are. So hi, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. It is Wednesday night for your Wednesday night webinar. I am Dr. Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer here at OCD. And OCD, a downloadable app. You get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out. It's a free download. And if you're looking for teletherapy anywhere across the United States and Canada and Australia and the UK, we are there and available for you. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, guess what? We have a guest tonight. Hi, Tyler. How you doing?
Great. Glad to be here.
Tell everybody who you are and why you're here, Tyler.
Yeah, my name's Tyler. I work at OCD on a part of the hiring team for therapists, and got a personal connection to OCD. I've been diagnosed with the disorder for some years now, and I work at OCD as well. So happy to join and see what we got going on.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. Some of the things we do whenever we have guests is we give you some time to tell your story a little bit, as much as you would like to talk to people about what's going on. And it's also nice when we're going through some of the questions too, to get the perspective of somebody with some lived OCD experience as well. So we'll have you do that as well too, if that sounds good.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So M says, hello, I'm recently diagnosed in December. I'm now bouncing between mourning 13 years of symptoms undiagnosed and worrying that I actually just have GAD and have lied somehow to get my diagnosis. I definitely had self-harm obsessions for 3 years of my life in high school, and my anxiety is now about relationships, health, developing schizophrenia, etc. I tend to loop and demand repetitive rumination, memory reviewing, assurance seeking in ways that look a lot like OCD, but a lot of mental compulsions also underfall the GAD umbrella. Honestly, this worry that I'm faking OCD and the fact that I'm researching it for hours a day feels like a loop in and of itself, but even drawing that compulsion feels deceptive. Advice on coping. Well, I'll just say it sounds like a compulsion to me from what you're describing there. The fact that you are going to keep doing research and never be satisfied in answer sounds like a pretty good hallmark of obsessive compulsive disorder to me. Obviously, I can't give clinical advice here or diagnostic advice to anyone, not a webinar, but Em, I'm wondering what you're searching for. Because if you're searching for an actual answer, 100% proof answer, that we know you're never going to find, although OCD is going to want you to find it, right? So Tyler, and I don't know if that resonates with you at all in anything that you've gone through and research and those types of things, but I'd love your input on that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was, before we signed on to the webinar, I was trying to figure out what to put as my background. And OCD has one of these backgrounds that says exposure response prevention, uncertainty, repeat. And then, the big OCD logo. So I just think that when you have OCD, you'll do anything you can to get that certainty, but you're never going to get it. So it's really, for me, what helped me was about accepting the uncertainty for what it is. And, that's really, what helped me in my journey.
Yeah. And what was it like, Tyler, to have to accept the fact that you were never going to get an answer that was going to be satisfying to what your OCD wanted?
Yeah. Kind of felt like I was getting punked, when my therapist said that, because I was like, well, it makes sense, but really, like, this is it, getting comfortable with uncertainty around my theme of OCD. But I think it's just such a a paradox, like chasing something you're never going to get. So it was relieving, but also frustrating at the same time.
How did you finally come to terms with it?
Oh man.
Or have you been able to come to terms with it? Might also be.
Yeah, I think what helped me come to terms with it was realizing that when you accept uncertainty and you do ERP, that's when you're going to feel better. So I think just seeing the results in my daily mental health, that's probably when I felt the best about it.
Yeah. And what's it like now to live with OCD instead of trying to make it go away or to fight it off or something like that?
Fine. It's just like a part of you. So, people have things about them that they live with every day, and living with OCD is totally manageable and still living a really fulfilling life. I think just finding the right treatment helps you live it to the fullest. So, yeah, I think living with OCD is totally fine, especially when you find the right treatment.
Cool. Amber says, what would therapy and OCD look like for someone who's already been through ERP with another therapist not related to OCD, currently struggling with health anxiety OCD? It would be nice and would like to try OCD. It's hard to say because I can't guarantee the quality of any ERP that was done outside of OCD with another therapist. And so it would be difficult to know. There are therapists out there who say they're doing ERP who are not so much doing ERP or talking about ERP, but maybe aren't doing it in sessions or things like that. So my goal would be that if you came to know CD, you would be getting ERP and doing them in sessions and beginning homework assignments and things to practice outside of it as well too. Did you have that at all in your therapy journey, Tyler?
Yeah, totally. I was getting therapy. I've been in and out of therapy my whole life, but when I got my diagnosis for OCD, it was before NoCD, but I wasn't doing, ERP when I got my diagnosis. So when I came to NoCD, we were doing ERP. And that's what helped me a lot.
Awesome. Sherry says, is self-harm close to suicidal OCD? No, not necessarily. Self-harm is intentionally doing some types of harmful thing to yourself, like maybe cutting or burning or hitting yourself. Sometimes people do that as a distraction from other emotional experiences that they're having. You might ask, is that a compulsion to do such a thing? It would only be if it was involved in an obsession in some way, but very often we don't see that in OCD, that there's a self-harm compulsion that many people do. You see self-harm coming more along the lines of, again, dealing with very dysregulating or uncomfortable types of emotional experiences, versus suicidal OCD is obsessions, intrusive thoughts or images or urges around what if I were to commit suicide or kill myself or harm myself in some way, and then doing some kind of compulsive behavior to try to prevent that from happening. So I have to hide all the knives, and I would see in suicide themed OCD, people would go to great extent to not do any harm to themselves whatsoever out of fear that they might be trying to do some kind of suicidal behavior. So I would see a big difference in that way as well too. In self-harm, you are seeing people do harm to themselves, but in suicidal OCD, you're seeing every attempt to make sure that no harm comes to self whatsoever. Peter says, Dr. McGrath, I can't drop the belief that something is wrong with my thinking process. I feel like I have lost my creativity and intelligence and can't think anymore. I also can't seem to figure it out. Well, as I say on this webinar now and then, maybe it is because it is unfigure-outable, and therefore that is why you can't figure it out. Tyler, did you ever actually figure out anything about your OCD, even along the journey? Were there things that you've had an epiphany to, and then OCD said, oh, good, you finally figured it out. Congratulations, I'll go now.
No,
No?
no.
No. Okay.
I
So,
think I think for me and maybe others with OCD, there's this overwhelming feeling of having to figure something out. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
And um, maybe somehow if I figure this out, then it'll be the end of my suffering. Um, but yeah, there wasn't anything particular for me that I found out, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
done.
Yeah. I would say that a belief that something's wrong with you is not a guarantee that there is something wrong with you. You know, OCD will try to get you to believe all sorts of things and to think all sorts of things and to worry about all sorts of things. Like, what if I have lost my creativity? Or what if I'm not intelligent anymore? Or what if I can't think anymore? Or what if something's wrong with my thinking process? Or what if this? Or what if that? Or what if that? And what if? And what if? And what if? And what if? And it will just throw these things that you will just keep bombing you with what ifs. But here's the issue: you can't answer these questions, right? So now you're just left with doubt and insecurity and wonder and feeling overwhelmed about everything. And it's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do in these situations? Well, you know uh you have to learn to live with doubt and uncertainty. And so, Tyler, we kind of touched on this, but maybe more directly here. Is there anything that you feel 100% certain about in your life?
Mm, that'll be uncertain.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, well, I'll go with that one. I'll go with that one. And how much does your OCD still try to drive you to find some certainty
Every day,
every day?
for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes it's louder, other times it's quieter, other times it's I don't notice it at all. It's just about repetition for me.
Mhm. Yeah, good. Callie says, I've relapsed and struggling with going crazy OCD, psychosis, or schizophrenia, and have been checking what I hear, and it's making me feel like I'm losing myself for real this time. Well, first of all, Callie, let's make sure that you have a therapist that you're working with, right? Who can help you through this experience. Here's one thing where we really do know from research, right? And that is, the more that you check something, the less confidence you have in that thing. So if checking actually helped people with OCD who are checkers should be the most confident people in the entire world based on the amount of checking that they do. And yet we don't we don't see that happening. We see quite the opposite happening, actually, right? We see people with OCD doing very little checking at all. I mean, people without OCD doing very little checking, and we see people with OCD doing so much checking, and in doing so, it's increasing the doubt they're having instead of decreasing the doubt they're having. Right. So, do you think we want to have people check more, or do we want to have people check less? Well, less would be the answer. Do you think in the moment it feels better to check more or less? Check more. In the moment, it feels better to check more. In the long term, is it better to check more or less? Check less in the long term. So now we have some decisions to make. Do we do what feels good in the moment, or do we do what feels good for me in the long term? And ultimately, that's what people have to decide: what is going to be best for me in the long term, I would hope, versus what's going to feel the best right now. I've used this story sometimes. Tyler, imagine you have a niece or a nephew, okay? And they are in a detox program, and they are detoxing from alcohol. And you go to visit them and they say, Uncle Tyler, this is the worst I've ever felt in my life. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm going to throw up. I have a fever. I have the chills. My body hurts all over the place. I cannot tell you how absolutely awful and terrible this entire experience is, would you please just go down the street to the liquor store, get 2 small airplane bottles of vodka, and sneak them in here for me so that I could stop going through this withdrawal so that I could feel better now? Tyler, would you do that for them?
No.
Why not?
Because it'll be better for you in the long run by not doing it.
So you'd willingly watch your niece and nephew suffer now in order for them to be better later.
Correct. Yep.
Interesting. That is, I would say, the correct answer personally as well too. But there's other people who can't take that, right? Either themselves or watching someone else do it. And this is why sometimes it's important to get families involved in OCD treatment, because sometimes families are undermining treatment by giving reassurance and helping with avoidance and distraction, and therefore undermining all of the work that's being done in therapy by providing those immediately gratifying safety behaviors to people right then and there.
Yep, totally.
Mm-hmm. Nushin said, when it is said a thought is just a thought, neither good or bad, how do I justify thoughts like cursing, insulting that everybody knows are bad, as it is just a thought? Well, Tyler, we work together, and I've had some cursing thoughts at you a few times, just so you know. You might have had some at me too, because I couldn't make an interview or do something for you. How bad have my cursing thoughts at you affected your life?
None.
You sure? I have pretty powerful thoughts, just so you know.
Yeah, none.
I mean, I have PhD level thoughts, Tyler. They gotta be something, right?
No,
not a thing. Okay. So Tyler, as someone again with lived experience, what is your experience about all of the various intrusive thoughts that you have and how they affect other people?
Yeah, they don't. I think no matter the thought you have, if you have OCD, your thoughts are ego dystonic, so they're completely unwanted. I think if they impact other people at all, I think there's a great deal of sympathy to be had for those that suffer from a lot of brutal intrusive thoughts, because it can cause a lot of stress on the person that's, feeling those thoughts on a really frequent basis. But thoughts can't hurt other people. They're just thoughts.
Yeah. And I've never once labeled a thought as good or bad or right or wrong, right? And I know that that's what you start there, Anushin. So you wonder, just because we're not labeling thoughts doesn't mean that we're justifying thoughts. I mean, we're not saying cursing or insulting people in your head is anything that anyone likes, or even that we want someone to aspire to do all the time. But I might have, as an exposure therapy and response prevention therapy exercise, have someone, as they're passing another person on the street, think, I hope you trip, and not do any kind of compulsion to try to prevent that from happening, right? We could all do that right now, actually. Why don't we all participate in a little ERP right now? Everyone stare at your ceiling for the next 10 seconds and wish for it to collapse on top of you. Go. All right, it didn't happen. We're going to try one more, all right? Everybody watching the webinar right now. Everybody watching the webinar right now. Wish for Tyler's ceiling to collapse on top of him in the next 10 seconds. That's 96 wishes coming at you, Tyler. Don't anyone do a compulsion. Go. Tyler, you still appear to be alive.
I got good roofing.
Yeah, or someone did a compulsion, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Or thoughts don't make things happen. And why must we give thoughts so much attention and time? Let's see. AG says, any advice on how to cope with ongoing gun violence in community schools? I'm scared to send my young kids to school anywhere. Want to homeschool, but would that be an avoidance compulsion? AG, I don't know if you have OCD, so I can't tell you if that would be an avoidance or compulsion or anything like that. So that's hard for me to state at this point. Obviously, there are things that happen out there in the world, and so I think that the best thing that we can all do is practice awareness and teach good safety skills to everybody, so that we are prepared for anything that happens. I would hope to never hear any community or person ever say, "I thought it could never happen here," because something could happen anywhere, right? It absolutely could happen, But here's the other piece: we have to decide, right? Are we going to only live in a world where we have a guarantee that there will be no danger to happen at all? Because if that's the case, none of us are leaving our houses. It's just the way that it's going to be. Nobody's going to leave our house. I have had a shooting incident. I've been shot at about a year and a half ago in downtown Chicago, and I will still go downtown. I'm a little more aware these days in downtown Chicago than I probably was prior to that incident, but I have been shot at, and it was directed at me. Actually, it was. It was not like they were aiming at anyone else. They were aiming right at me. Luckily, bad shot, so I was fortunate there. But yeah, it is. It is a fact of our lives these days that there is violence out there, right? And so I hope that all of us are on our toes and aware, but also not letting the fact that is out there like that going to stop us from living our lives, right? It may give us a little pause, and it may have us do a few things in order to check our safety and assure that as much as possible we are safe. So the McGrath rules of life these days are give a very long following distance between you and the cars around you, right? If someone wants to get in front of you, please go right ahead. Be my guest. Honking horns, probably not so necessary anymore, unless somebody is about to go off the road. You want to get their attention or something like that. And I've learned I'm just going to kind of mind my own business for the most part in the world, But I've accepted the fact that could happen again to me too. And so every time I go out, I know that I could get shot at. And one thing I never said after getting shot at was, God, I never thought that would happen to me. I didn't say that because I was like, well, it could happen to me. And I knew that it could happen to me, and it has happened to me. And it could happen to me again. And I'm still going to live my life knowing that could happen to me again as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that,
Tyler. Yeah, I think for me personally, whenever I respond to an intrusive thought about something violent or something really unfortunate happening, and I go, maybe, like, it might happen, it seems to like really deflate the thought for me personally, and not give it as much power. So yeah, like you said, I think accepting uncertainty around things and whether or not they might happen, as rough as it might be to think about, is what might help you become more open to being in certain situations.
Yes, absolutely. I was just bouncing around a little bit here. B asked, does OCD ever go away? You want to take that one, Tyler?
Yeah, sure. So your diagnosis, I mean, once you're diagnosed with OCD, you're you got OCD. But your symptoms can certainly decrease. I know ERP is the gold standard of treatment, and often times when we talk to therapists at an OCD, they'll ask, "Hey, does ERP not work?" And we'll say, "Yeah, if you don't do it." So um, yeah, I think you're always going to have OCD, but you can really get a hold on it with putting focus around your mental health, doing ERP, and other activities that help you with your mental health.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right, I'm going to go back to try to find where we were there. Adam says, for the record, I'm not taking an escalator with me. Good, because last time I talked about, if I'm on an escalator with anybody, I'm going to think about pushing them because I've treated so many people who have that fear. So thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Adam does say, thanks for everything you do and all the questions you answer. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Janine says, please help. After ERP, I got the feared outcomes multiple times. My brain has learned exposing is likely to produce the feared consequences. What is the goal of treatment in this case? Janine, I don't really know what happened or anything like that, but it is hard to say. The goal of ERP is to do one of two things: to teach you that either the feared outcomes don't occur, or if they do occur, you can handle them. That would be to me the two things that we're really looking for in our work with obsessive compulsive disorder and ERP. Now, I don't know if maybe somebody flooded you and it was overwhelming or something of that nature. It's hard to say. So I would go back to whoever your therapist was and working on this and let them know that this has been the result and it has not been easy to deal with and that you need some help in this and see what they can do to help you. Samia says, is scrupulosity difficult to treat? What is the success rate? Is it similar to existential OCD? And then Steve replied, I got over scrupulosity. Awesome. I love treating scrupulosity. In fact, I am on the International OCD Foundation Task Force for OCD and Faith. And we actually have a conference coming up in just a couple of weeks. So if you go to the International OCD Foundation website, everyone, and you can look at the OCD and Faith conference coming up, and there'll be several of us who will be speaking about the relationship between OCD and faith, or the lack of faith as well, too, because even atheists and agnostics can have scrupulosity of a religious nature. They could be worried, what if they're wrong, even though they don't believe that there is something, but then they'll have intrusive thoughts about what if that's not right, and then they might compulsively pray, even though they don't believe the prayers are doing anything, but it just covers all the gods just in case to make sure, and all these things too. So I do not find scrupulosity any more difficult to treat than any other type of OCD personally. I personally really enjoy treating scrupulosity. My goal is not to influence the faith of anyone. My goal is to get people to live the life that they want to live in whatever faith tradition it is that they want to live their life in. That is the goal. And let me add one thing to this. Sometimes people will come into treatment and they'll say, well, I can only have a therapist who shares my faith. And that is so absolutely not true in treating scrupulosity, because scrupulosity is not a faith problem. It is an OCD problem. You want a specialist in OCD when you're getting treated for scrupulosity, not a specialist in your faith. If you're going for a specialist in your faith, they're not probably going to be an OCD expert unless they happen to be both a expert in your faith and OCD, which would probably be a pretty rare find, I would think, in these cases. So remember, when you're looking for treatment for scrupulosity, you're wanting to find an OCD expert. Trip Leah says, has anyone ever struggled with magical thinking OCD? Tyler, any of that for you at all? Or?
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Sprinkled in, yeah, totally. I think OCD can often change themes, and you can have two themes going on at once. So, if I have some sort of theme and, magical thinking OCD on top of that, I think that's totally normal. And oftentimes they can play off one another, So I think that's triply. I definitely have struggled with magical thinking OCD, and I think that's pretty common.
Yeah. Can ERP help with real event OCD? And would I be judged by my therapist for the event? It's a struggle to convince myself I deserve therapy. Yes, absolutely. Very helpful with real event OCD. Would you be judged by your therapist? Well, I would sure as heck hope not. I mean, I don't know why any therapist would be judging people for having OCD or concerns like this. And the struggle to convince yourself you deserve therapy. Tyler, how's that? As someone with a lived experience, are there times that it's a struggle that or do you think maybe I deserve these punishments or intrusive thoughts or anything of that nature? Or that could be very subtype related to them. So,
Yeah, I think I've always deserved therapy. I think anyone does
okay.
if they're struggling. Sometimes I think I don't know if it's OCD or what. Sometimes I think if a lot of good things happen in a row, it's like, wow, really? Like, am I deserving this? But that's the way maybe my brain works. I think everyone deserves therapy, and I certainly thought I deserved it as well.
Mhm. Yeah, there's also people who think if a bunch of good things happen, now something bad has to happen.
Right.
Something eventually is going to come and even it out. And then when something bad happens, they go, "See, I told you, I knew it was going to happen,"
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
um, that'd be like saying, well, flipping a coin. I just flipped 25 heads, but I know a tail is coming soon. And then when it does, see, I told you. Well,
Right.
but it was a 50% chance every time it was going to happen eventually, right? It's just the way that it is. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
I think as more people become, I think definitely now in 2023, a lot of people are becoming more open to doing therapy, and I definitely think that everyone deserves it. So if you're able to get it, go get it.
All right, let's see. Alok says, I got OCD thoughts while praying, and they are mainly driven by fear or guilt. I tried ERP, but many times I cannot sit with it. Any suggestions? So you want to take that? You're nodding, Tyler. You want to jump on that one? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the praying um, might be a compulsion if you're uncomfortable with the fear, the guilt that you're getting from your obsessions.
Hmm.
In this case, it's sitting with it is kind of the goal. So yeah, I think this is another super common theme, but sitting with those obsessions, as uncomfortable as you may be, is the end goal. And then as you do that, your OCD should have less and less of an effect on you.
Yeah. Um, the idea that you're getting intrusive thoughts while praying makes a ton of sense, right? Because I'm going to bet that you're entering praying with the hope of not having any intrusive thoughts happening while praying. And if you want to guarantee having intrusive thoughts while praying, think to yourself, boy, I sure hope I don't have any intrusive thoughts while I'm praying. Because all that is going to do is guarantee you having intrusive thoughts while praying.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that I do that when back before, like a while ago, when I was really anxious a lot, and even now, I'll try to meditate, and then intrusive thoughts come by, and I'm like, well, yeah, they're still there. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, how does one deal with uncertainty, fear that their obsessions are something they should really feel worried or guilty about, as opposed to something their OCD is causing? Uh, is there are there things that pop into our head that we should feel worried or guilty about? Becomes is what that comes down to, I think, right? And so then it's how do you tell the difference between is it OCD or is it not OCD? Right? So what I would take a look at first off is that if something pops into your head, are you able to just say, "Oh, that was weird," and let it go? If that's the case, not OCD. If something pops into your head and you think, "Oh, that's awful, that's horrible," and you do some kind of compulsion, mental or behavioral, to neutralize it, then you're looking at obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. those are the ways that you're really looking at it. So if there's compulsions, which gives us the signal of obsessive compulsive disorder, what guilt is there to have? Because guilt, I would think, would come from something that we willingly want to think about. But intrusive thoughts in OCD aren't described in the diagnostic manual as being willful kind of thoughts. They're described as being intrusive types of thoughts. So why do we have to feel guilty about things that randomly pop in our head? Right. Like I had the random idea earlier of all of us wishing for Tyler's ceiling to collapse on him. Tyler, how much guilt should I have for having put you through that?
0.
Are you now? I think you're just saying that, and you're just being kind. So, can you give me an honest answer? How much guilt should I have for having put you through that?
None. It's a random thought.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think you're lying to me. So I'm going to ask you again. And we could play this on and on and on, right, Tyler? I could keep wanting, and then eventually you might say, okay, fine, you can have a little guilt. And I would say, oh my God, I knew it. Oh shit. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so sorry, Tyler. I feel so bad about that. I mean, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I knew that was the worst and the most horrible thing in the world. And please forgive me. And you might have just said it to get me to shut up. Right. And all it did now was confirm what I knew to be true all along, and that you had just been being nice before. But now you're actually telling me the truth, which actually is, yes, I am a horrible, awful person for having done that example with you. Right. And now every time I see you going forward, Tyler, for the rest of the time we work together, I'm going to be apologizing to you every time and asking you if you're okay, and if your ceiling's okay, and if there's any cracks in it, and can I send a construction crew over to really bolster up that ceiling and maybe put another couple of layers of 2x4s and plywood up there to make sure nothing falls on you or anything like that, right? So you would be damned if you told me and damned if you didn't tell me, because if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have accepted that. And once you did say there should be some guilt, I would have known what my OCD was telling me all along to be true, that yes, I'm a horrible, awful person.
Mhm.
Yeah. But there's another option, which is I just don't have to go down that road.
Right.
I'm gonna move away from that. Let that go. And that's what we work on in treatment, folks, right? That piece right there. You might say, well, gosh, how do you do that? It takes practice, right? It absolutely takes practice to be able to walk away from an intrusive thought. Yeah. It might be ringing your doorbell, but you don't have to open the door and let it in. You might open the door and crack up. Oh, it's intrusive thought. Yeah, we're good. Thank you. And you close the door again. And that's it. You don't have to buy what they're selling, right? It isn't necessary to have them come into your house and give the sales pitch every single time. But that's what some people do. They're constantly opening the door. They're constantly letting OCD in. They're listening to the sales pitch. They're buying the timeshare. Whatever it is, they're doing all of this stuff, and they're getting more and more involved in the OCD and less involved in the life that they want to live in. Right? So. Does ERP look different with kids on the spectrum? It can. And so that's, again, where it does help to find someone who's also had some training in working with people who are on the autism spectrum, so that you can figure out where does the OCD line end and the autism begin, because there can look similar at times in various ways. And so you want to be able to work with someone who's really adept at kind of figuring out where the two things are co-occurring and how you're going to approach both of them. By the way, haven't done another No CD plug for a while here. So just a reminder to everyone, tonight's webinar brought to you by No CD, a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS. Please check us out at nocd.com. There's good stuff happening here. We would love to be able to treat you if you're looking for therapy for obsessive compulsive disorder. And if you're in the UK or Canada or Australia, and just by the way, we work with more than OCD too. So we do body focused repetitive behaviors like skin picking, excoriation, it's called also trichotillomania or hair pulling. And we do work with hoarding, and we do work with tics as well too. So reach out to us. Let us know if we can help you in any way. Download that app, hit the therapist button, or go to nocd.com or treatmyocd.com, and let's see what we can do for you. Set up a free 15-minute call with our care team, and let us get you started on that journey. Lainey says, trying to understand if intrusive thoughts ever really go away or if they just seem smaller. What do you think, Tyler?
They just seem smaller. Yeah. Everyone, OCD or not, is going to have intrusive thoughts. So it's just kind of how about you react to them. And in my experience, but yeah, they'll just get smaller over time, and ERP helps.
Christina says, is it on yet? But that came from 7:05. Yes, apologies to everyone. We were a little bit late this evening. I apologize. I had a catastrophic meltdown of my computer and had absolutely no microphone or camera or anything. So had to hit the restart button there. But we are all good. So all right. Let's see. Imposer says, I'm a poser. Sometimes it takes a while to read the name. Recently been having sleep issues with OCD. One of my biggest compulsions is mental checking. I'm constantly checking, am I asleep? Am I asleep now? What about now? And it's been keeping me very sleep deprived. Any tips on how to deal with this? I've never had this theme before. I would love you, I'm a poser 3, to go to sleep, and instead of checking to see if you are asleep, I would like you to go to sleep and wish for yourself not to be able to sleep all night long. Right? That would be one of the ERP exercises that I would do with someone if I was working with them and they had a fear of what if I weren't able to sleep, right? Of course, the fact that you're checking to see if you're asleep means you're awake, because I don't know anybody who does mental checking while they're sleeping, unless you did it, Tyler, and I'm not aware of that ever happening. Could you? I don't know if you want to fill me in on that one or not, but
no, I think for me, I might have had a fear. What if I don't fall asleep, and then it affects me the next day, and it continues to happen, and it's affecting my job or other activities? I definitely had some worries around that.
Yeah. So I'm a poser 3. I'm wondering this: why do you need to know if you're asleep or not? What purpose is that serving? What are you getting out of that, knowing if you are asleep or not asleep, right? And this is such an interesting obsession, right? And compulsion, because I think most people hearing it would agree that you could only ask yourself if you're asleep if you're not asleep. Right? But when we doubt our perceptions, this is another way that OCD comes across. And this is why this is a really interesting one. OCD will get you to doubt perceptions. I've seen people turn lights off and then look around the room and go, okay, that's dark, but wait, what if that isn't? So then they turn the light back on, and then okay, so that's what it's like when the light's on, and then they turn the light off again. But is it really dark? Is it really that different? So they turn the light back on again, and they'll keep doing it until they've convinced themselves that the light is actually off, right? So you can absolutely have an experience of perceptual doubt in obsessive compulsive disorder and do all sorts of compulsions to check to see if you're actually experiencing your environment in a certain way, or if it's kind of a mirage or something like that. So I'm a poser 3. I want you to work on hoping you don't fall asleep. And if you find yourself asking yourself if you're asleep, reply with, "I sure hope not." And let's pull the Mickey, as they would say in Ireland, pull the Mickey out of the old OCD. Take the rug out from under it, kind of thing, right? And just turn it on its ear and see what happens. Hey, Tyler, were there any particular questions in the feed that you wanted to get to and address? Please feel free to jump around a little bit there. I'll let you take one.
Sure. Let's see here. High IQ of 190 says, I keep getting intrusive thoughts about suicide, and I've just been accepting it, but it doesn't seem to be fading. This is a big theme of mine, personally, of the fear of if I will commit suicide. Yeah, it can be a tough one, right? Especially because OCD tends to latch onto themes that you really value as a person. So it can be very confusing, right? Like why you're having these sort of thoughts. But yeah, I would just say to you, if you're able to work with a therapist who specializes in OCD, do so. I know IOCDF has a lot of support groups that you can join, if and when you're available. But yeah, it's just a super confusing theme. And I know for me, like for a while, I was kind of, I guess, just not willing to really want to bring it up because I was afraid of what people might think or say, because I didn't want to give off the impression that I was suicidal. But I think at the end of the day, having therapists or family or anyone you could talk to, friends, to say, hey, I keep getting intrusive thoughts about suicide. I don't know why I'm having them, but they're really bothering me, can be really helpful in your mental health recovery. But yeah, I empathize with you and would say just try and find an OCD therapist or an OCD support group where you can talk about these thoughts and work on ERP.
Any other ones?
Let's see here. Love Kamalana says, why are people afraid of dying? And then Beth Carducci says, fear of the unknown. I think, yeah, would this fall under existentialism? Fear of dying? I think, just this will be another common intrusive thought for OCD, fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty, what's going to happen when this happens, or what if this happens, and then you can really spiral down the rabbit hole. Let's see here. I think Dr. McGrath may have froze. Let's see. Vivian Knott says, how do you distinguish between discipline and focus and unhealthy obsessions? Oh, man. Man, Vivian Knott, this is a good question. I think self-compassion really might come into play here, allowing yourself to have times where you're not as disciplined or focused. We all are human at the end of the day. And I would wonder what an unhealthy obsession is. I think, like Dr. McGrath was saying earlier, thoughts are thoughts, and like him thinking that my ceiling is going to collapse on top of me and kill me. That it's just a thought at the end of the day. So I would just try to have self-compassion and understand that obsessions are obsessions, thoughts are thoughts, and there's no good or bad value to them. Looks like we got another one from Rubika Kitu, who said, I've been working on resolving one subset of OCD during therapy, but other ones keep taking its place. How do I deal with this?
Sorry
Yeah,
about that. It seems to be a technology hell night. I apologize. My internet popped off for a second.
no worries. Yeah, Rubika Kitu said, I have been working on resolving one subset of OCD during therapy, but other ones keep taking its place. How do I deal with this? Yeah, I think it's super common for your themes to change in OCD.
Yeah.
But the solution to keep OCD at bay is going to be exposure and response prevention. So um, maybe try to do some ERP exercises for both themes. How would you work with this, Dr. McGrath? And he froze again. Yeah, I would just say try to work with your OCD therapist who has training in OCD treatment, and try to work on doing exposures for both of your themes.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, this is a good one. Have a question here that says advice on physical sensations that feel real, like the groinal. It makes me spiral.
Okay. One of the things I say all the time is it has to feel real, because if it doesn't feel real, then there's no need for treatment for it, right? You would just be able to say, oh, I'm having that feeling. But it doesn't feel real. So it's okay. So it has to feel real. Let's all recognize that, right? Let's just acknowledge that it has to feel real. And if it doesn't feel real, you don't need me. You don't need a therapist, right? So it's going to feel real, but just because it feels real doesn't mean there has to be meaning attached to it.
Mm.
Right. So maybe you do get a groinal, right? And maybe you got the groinal because you were hoping, boy, I sure hope I don't get a groinal, which then is going to guarantee that you're going to get a groinal, right? And Tyler, I've likened that to, if I start talking to you, Tyler, about lice and how lice live in your hair and they like to dig into your scalp, and after a while, you're going to get itchy and you're going to itch your head, even though you don't have lice. Just by my talking about it, it's enough to do it, right?
Yep.
And so this is what happens with the groinal response too. You're going to hope not to have it. Then you're going to be checking to see if you have it. You're going to feel something there, and you're going to assume, well, that thing's real, it's there. And then you're going to give some meaning to it. And that's going to prove to you that, oh, yes, I'm a bad person. I have groinals in places I shouldn't. And it means all these bad, awful, horrible things. When the reality is you're very checking and hoping you didn't have it was the thing that made it happen in the first place.
Yeah. Let's see here. We got another one from Shelby who says, if you have OCD and under extreme stress, will you go crazy? I'm under extreme stress and feel like my brain is breaking and I'm going to go psycho.
There are many people who are under extreme stress at work or with family things, or who've been through natural disasters or things like that, who do not go crazy, do not go psycho at all. So feeling extremely understressed is not the thing that causes something like that to happen. I don't know what going psycho or crazy even is. I think that those are terms that OCD loves to throw at people about what if you were to go crazy, what if you were to go psycho, but none of us can really identify what crazy or psycho actually means, other than it's a worst case scenario word that people jump onto and utilize all the time.
Let's see here. Any tips for dealing with health concern OCD, particularly when panic disorder and anxiety are causing very real symptoms?
Yeah, there's great treatment for panic symptoms, like interoceptive exposures, where we purposely expose people to panic-like sensations or feelings. We do things like running in place and hyperventilating and breathing through straws and spinning in chairs. And we teach people not to be afraid of the physiological sensations that they experience while they are afraid of things. And once you learn not to fear physiological sensations, well, then guess what happens? They don't really bother you so much anymore.
Yeah. This is another good one from Jay, who said, I'm always worried that I will send an inappropriate email or message. It's something that causes me to check my emails and messages over and over again. Do you have any advice on how to tackle this?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to assume in all your checking, you've never once found a inappropriate email that you've ever sent to anybody. But of course, that doesn't matter. All that matters is the next email that you're going to send. So I could send 5,000 emails. None of them are inappropriate, but they don't count. What counts is the next one. And what if that one is inappropriate? And I should always go back and check to see if that might be the case or not. So I would do purposeful, difficult emails, like put some punctuation in there that's wrong, maybe call somebody the wrong name, something like that. And I would put little things into emails that are incorrect or mistakes so that you learn that you can handle doing that, right? You don't have to send an amazingly inappropriate email that's going to get you canceled or fired. We're not asking someone to do that. But I want you to know that you can imperfectly email and handle it and be okay.
Madison says, is it normal for OCD to latch onto scary movies even when you don't really believe it's possible?
OCD can latch onto anything.
Yeah.
Right. So it does. Is it normal for OCD to latch onto blank is the appropriate question. And the answer is yes, to that question. Right.
Yeah.
Just throw in whatever you want in the blank.
Yeah. I remember like particular themes I had. I would just recognize letters in certain words, and if it was similar to a word that was regarding my obsession, then I would start to like be like, oh my God, there it is again. It's out for me or something like that. So
Yeah.
one of the exposures I did was, and I still do, is I'll do one of those random word searches that have a lot of triggering words around them, and I'll spend time doing a word search just so they're all in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's cool. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. A lot of comments.
Medina's giving you props for handling my internet going down. She said, "You got it, Tyler." So thanks, Medina. Appreciate it.
Let's see.
Amber says her health concerns feel real. Absolutely, they feel real. Again, they have to feel real. OCD that doesn't feel real doesn't get treatment and doesn't seek out therapists or anything like that. Beth said, "Ew, lice." Yes, yeah, my lice example always goes over so well every time that I give that one.
I got a good one here, Dr. McGrath. Louise said, "Any tips for brain fog? I keep trying constantly to quiz my memory all day long, even though I do remember everything. Just the fog creeps me out. Thanks, guys."
So is there actually brain fog in that situation, or is there a fear of what if there would be brain fog? And then that leads to the quizzing to see. And then when you do the quizzing and you discover that you remember everything, that feels great. So that compulsion is then paying off because it's giving you the instantaneous relief that you have just gotten proof that you don't have brain fog and it hasn't stopped your memory or anything like that as well too. And therefore it keeps feeding on itself to do that more and more and gets you to check for brain fog more because OCD eats compulsions for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And all it wants you to do is more and more compulsions over time.
Yeah. And I see another one similar to that idea from another guest who said, "Hi, got contamination OCD, can't touch anything, can't go to the toilet, can't eat everything I touch, feels contaminated, like I've got things on me that might drop off me and I'll lose them forever. So I film steps," which sounds like a compulsion.
Yep, another compulsion. So I'm going to challenge one word in there, and this will have to be our last one because we're getting to our hour. So we went over a little bit tonight since we started a little late, but just the word can't is in there a lot, right? I can't touch things. And I'm going to challenge you. You can touch things. Will you or won't you touch things is the question. And why won't you? Because I'm going to bet before the contamination got as bad as it is, you were touching things all the time. So the things haven't changed that you're touching or not touching now. What's changed is your perception of those things. And what I want to do is make sure that you're doing exposure response prevention therapy so that you can start interacting with those things that you're not touching anymore and learn that even though they may seem to be contaminated and they may feel uncomfortable, doesn't actually mean there's any danger in any of that whatsoever. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us. And again, sorry for a little bit of technological issues tonight, but we got through it. Tyler, you were a trooper. Thanks for carrying on while I was dealing with a couple of things there. Most appreciated. And thanks for all the work you're doing here at NoCD too, Tyler. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me.
Any final passing words there for everybody before you go?
Stay strong, accept uncertainty, and take it easy on yourself.
Awesome. Remember, everyone, reach out to us at nocd.com. Download that NoCD app at Google Play or iOS. And if you're looking for teletherapy in the UK or Canada or the United States or Australia, we're available. And we treat things like OCD and hoarding and BFRBs and tics as well, too. We do children, adolescents, adults, older adults. We cover it all. So check us out, and we'll see you again next week. John Grayson will be back again next week. We'll talk to you then, everyone.